And we're back in the car on a Friday like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Friday afternoon, Friday the 13th, here with me in New York. But once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. Well, Hollywood is abuzz. And I don't mean marijuana or anything like that, but Hollywood is buzzing. And Gen Xers far and wide are we rejoicing? Are we incredulous? Are we excited? In immortal words of Chevy Chase, the answer is D, all three. Because 98-year-old Mel Brooks, the guy was a gunner in World War II. The guy's 98 years old. He announced that he is directing, he can't be directing it, but he is going to, I don't think he's going to play both characters that he played, but there is going to be a sequel to Mel Brooks' classic Star Wars spoof from all the way back in 1987. A film didn't get great reviews, but it is very well remembered by history, and not just Gen Xers, young boomers, older boomers. There are plenty of people under 30 who love this movie, and it is Spaceballs. And in the world of the movie Spaceballs, for those who aren't familiar, there is a lot of talk about a sequel, and Mel Brooks was very meta before that was a thing. He would call attention to the fact that he was a character in a movie. Before that was done, it was very intertextual. He would reference other movies that he had made. He referenced other historical characters, naming himself, was it him? But naming a character Hedley Lamar in, I think it was in Blazing Saddles. And somebody points out, well, you can't call him Hedley Lamar. And he goes, no, don't worry about it. You'll sue her. Like you'll sue the real Hedley Lamar 80 years from now. So he was always that sort of thinker. He was certainly a visionary, a pioneer, and groundbreaking. Similar to Woody Allen, but not in exactly the same way. Mel Brooks took enormous risks in terms of how he made movies. The kinds of in-jokes that he favored. Woody didn't really go for that. Woody often broke the fourth wall, and he didn't seem to give a shit about narrative convention, because anybody could tell that the guy was a wizard behind the camera, and Woody had different kinds of, from a conceptual standpoint, the humor is not the same. Woody, kind of uptight intellectual. Mel Brooks just get down in the muck, or as he said, my movies rise below vulgarity. That is as great a quote as I can think of. But Mel Brooks announced Spaceballs 2, and it's not going to be the title that he talked about in the first Spaceballs, when he mentions that the characters were all going to meet again in Spaceballs 2, The Search for More Money. But it's going to be Spaceballs 2, The Schwartz Awakens. Because there is a lot of talk about, in the world of Spaceballs, what Star Wars calls the Force. In Spaceballs, it's Der Schwartz. And you have so many in jokes and ridiculous gags in the first movie. Unfortunately, the late, great John Candy will not be able to reprise his role as Barth. But supposedly, Bill Pullman, a.k.a. President Whitmore from Independence Day, but Lone Starr in the original Spaceballs, he's on board. And I think that I read that his son Lewis, Top Gun Maverick among others, I think he's in the most recent Salem's Lot, he's cast in the film. And Rick Moranis. Rick Moranis is one of those special people, specifically for Gen Xers and maybe some young boomers, but more Gen Xers. Rick Moranis is one of our guys because he is a very normal, dare I say, nerdy looking dude who ended up having a hugely successful movie career. And then he just walked away. He slowed down in the early to mid 90s, and then the last film that he has made, like literally Rick Moranis has not made a movie in 30 years. The last film that he had that came out was Big Bully with Tom Arnold. Not good. Not good. Now, I don't have anything against Tom Arnold, but he made some really bad movies. The Stupids, he did. he just made a lot of really lousy movies. But Rick Moranis left the movie business for simultaneously tragic and inspiring reasons. He left the movie business because his wife was terminal, and he already had enough money. He didn't talk about this. It's not like he went on TikTok in 1995 and said, "Hey, I've made enough money." He very quietly just stopped working, and he raised his boys. I think 2 boys, and even when they were college age, old enough to where he didn't have to be, caretaker to them. He could just be what you would call a normal single father. Again, this is all horrendous that he lost his wife and the kids lost their mom. But he just wasn't that into it. He wasn't seemingly very enthused about coming back. And really the first time any of us saw him, because he kept a very low profile, and he wasn't the sort of an individual where the paparazzi would ever be after him, because he didn't look like a movie star. He looks like a schlemiel, quite frankly. He always did, but that was part of his appeal. He was a little guy who had impeccable comic timing, and you just wanted to like him. He made movies where his characters weren't that likable, but we still want to like him anyway because it's him. But I think it was in the middle of COVID, Ryan Reynolds, fellow Canadian, I guess he considered him a friend, or he knew him. I don't know if he actually was friends with him. I don't know, like that part I don't know. But he reached out to Rick Moranis. Maybe he had an intermediary, or maybe he did have his phone number, and he said, "Hey, I have an idea for a Mint Mobile commercial. Would you like to take part?" Not buttering him up, but he said words to the effect of, "There's a lot of people that would be really happy to see you, even in a stupid commercial that I'm doing." And Rick agreed. And it's not that great of a commercial, but the shock of seeing him, I'm sorry, I got the warm fuzzies. It was great to see him do anything media related after all those years, and especially because Big Bully was terrible. It is a terrible, when it first came out, it was at 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's horrible. And he did the film with Ed O'Neill not long before that, Little Giants, not that good. He did another movie, Splitting Heirs, also not that good. So he had a number of films which just weren't good. But if you ask me, what are the best film characters that Rick Moranis ever played? You got to say Wayne Szalinski from, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. You have to say Louis Tully, obviously, Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2. You got to say Dark Helmet. There are plenty of people that will put Dark Helmet first. How do you make Darth Vader a funny guy while still having the menacing aspect, and while he's still willing to destroy an entire planet? I don't know how such things are possible, but it is almost impossible to see any other actor do what he does as Dark Helmet, where we're laughing with him at points. We are laughing at him a lot. I don't even know how he came up with the idea to do it that way. And Mel Brooks has talked about this, and this is, again, the sort of stuff in the movie business. Hollywood gets so many things wrong and has gotten so many things wrong over time. People are so self-important. They're, billionaires trying to tell us how to live, whatever you want to say. But Mel Brooks is somebody who has always respected his place in the movie business and has never assumed that when he did these kind of parody films, he's never assumed that the targets were going to be on board with it. So he would go out of his way and he would reach out. And he asked George Lucas sometime in the mid-'80s, he said, I have an idea for a Star Wars, a parody. What do you think? And George Lucas was an enormous fan of Spaceballs. He had Lucas's blessing, is what I meant to say. That George said, "Yeah, go ahead, make your movie. I'm sure it'll be great." He was a big fan. Remember, Mel Brooks was a star. He was a big name in the business before George Lucas hit the big time. This is where you start to get into how old everyone is. George Lucas would have seen Mel Brooks's career. He didn't want to be a comic director, a comedy director, a comic actor, but he would have been jealous of, wow, this guy has gone far. Mel Brooks, another person, didn't look like a movie star, looked like a regular guy. You could say the same about Woody Allen. But Rick Moranis coming back to play the evil Dark Helmet. I mean, they almost could just be reading the phone book and it'll be funny. You know, Joan Rivers has passed, so she can't come back as Dot Matrix. Who knows if they'll get Daphne Zuniga back? I hope they do. But if they don't, they'll probably come up with some silly reason why she is not in the film. But just the announcement makes me want to go back and watch the original, which I've seen, I don't even know how many times, start to finish, 20. Because it was PG-13 HBO, and I talk about this, but it bears repeating for young people where this is all just very almost foreign concepts. HBO and Cinemax did not show rated R movies between the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. They just didn't. If a film was PG-13 though, and they liked the metrics, the old days of the ratings, they could show them anytime, day or night. It's the reason why the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie I've seen the most is The Running Man, because it was PG-13. And HBO and Cinemax, they used to practically run it on an endless loop. So at this point, we just pretty much have to speculate, because there's no hard data as far as what the plot's going to be. And the film's not even coming out next year. They're talking about it being 2027. Now, I don't need to state the obvious, but I'm going to state the obvious anyway. Mel Brooks is really 98 years old. He really is 98 years old. He's not pretending to be 98. They better get on the stick here. And I can't believe his energy and how great he looks, given the life that he's lived. But he looks fantastic, and God bless him. He seems sharp as a tack, the way, if you've seen the ad, you probably are shocked to see that it's him. What I said, is he going to play a dual role? Because in the first one, he plays Yogurt. That's the Yoda character. But he also plays the president of Planet Spaceball, President Scroob. What a dumb name. That's amazing. I've got the same combination on my luggage. I mean, that is so on the nose. That's like a little Mike Myers on the nose humor. What's the combination of the air shield? 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the big plot point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then Dark Helmet goes, that's the stupidest combination I've ever heard in my life. That's the kind of thing an idiot would have on his luggage. And then that's kind of funny. But then President Scroob, Mel Brooks' character, comes in and said, what's the combination of the air shield? And he goes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's actually the George Weiner character, Colonel Sanders. What's the matter, Colonel Sanders? Chicken? So what's the combination to the air shield? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's amazing. I've got the same combination on my luggage. And then the two guys look at each other. I hope that Mel Brooks has some great ideas. I assume that the film will be funny just from the nostalgia perspective, the kind of legacy sequel. I know some people, for example, who loved the Beetlejuice legacy sequel. I know a lot of people that thought it's just a cash grab. There's nothing interesting. And yeah, Jenna Ortega, that's great. They got Winona back. It's just not good. A lot of people said it's just not good. I haven't seen it. I wasn't that big a fan of the first one. Like, this is not, because for me, Spaceballs, it's my favorite Mel Brooks movie. I'm supposed to love Young Frankenstein. I never found Young Frankenstein funny. Even the Gene Hackman scene where people are screaming with laughter. I don't know. I didn't think that was funny. It didn't work for me. Peter Boyle, yes. He's a riot. But there's stuff in that movie that I'm supposed to think is, revelatory. Doesn't work. Blazing Saddles is okay. High Anxiety, that's the Hitchcock parody, as I was mentioning, that Mel Brooks contacted Hitchcock, and Hitchcock really liked it. And Mel told a story many years ago, of course, where he invited Hitchcock to a screening of High Anxiety. And he said Hitch didn't laugh. He sat there stone-faced. And Mel Brooks was not only wondering if he made a bad decision. Should I really have even invited this guy to the premiere? Did I just, is he going to make one phone call and I'm going to be at it, like that kind of thing? Because Hitchcock was very powerful in the business. But it turned out that Hitch really liked it. He thought it was funny. He just didn't laugh, that kind of thing. So, I don't have any idea where it goes. And they're not really giving us any information in terms of plot, because my guess is the script hasn't been written. This literally is just an announcement. Now, if I'm asked, where does Spaceballs rank in terms of my favorite film comedies? I don't know. The 80s had some obviously great comedies such as Ghostbusters, also like Stripes with Bill Murray, Naked Gun. I don't think that I would have to look at a list. Would I have Spaceballs in my top 10? I think I probably would, because the rewatchability factor, and there's a little bit, if you really have seen the film enough, you can almost do some audience participation with it, where you're kind of shouting instructions at the screen because everybody knows what the next line is going to be. And it's Amazon MGM Studios, although it's not, from what I was reading, and it's so far down the road, this could change. I don't think that this is being specifically made to stream on Amazon. I think that the idea is that it's going to play in theaters, and then it'll presumably be on Amazon Prime. But I mentioned legacy sequels. Sometimes they really hit. Top Gun Maverick, I don't care what anybody says, is a way better movie than the original. Top Gun Maverick is a fantastic 4-star film. The original Top Gun is good. I mean, it didn't become as big a hit as it did by accident, but it's not really that great. I mean, it's a classic, but it's not Oscar level stuff. I mean, Tom Cruise had 2 movies in 1986, the second one being The Color of Money. And this is a little bit of an interesting, I think, historical footnote. Cruise began work on The Color of Money, I think maybe a month after finishing Top Gun, a month to 6 weeks. If you ask me, I think he actually looks younger in The Color of Money than he does in Top Gun. Maybe it's the hair, but you'd think normally with the bigger hair that it would make him look older. But it shot second, and it came out at the end of that year and was probably a bigger hit than it otherwise would have been, because Cruise was so hot after the success of Top Gun. But Bill Pullman's made a lot of interesting choices in his older era. He's worked on TV. He did the Independence Day sequel, which was really not good at all. I don't know what they were thinking. That felt like a cash grab, and you could even call that a legacy sequel. But I am intrigued. I am excited. And if we really get a Spaceballs sequel, The Schwartz Awakens, with Mel Brooks reprising his role as Yogurt, and Bill Pullman as Lone Starr, and Rick Moranis as Dark Helmet, I mean, there are going to be a lot of really happy Generation Xers if the film is anything like the first one. Spaceballs 2, The Schwartz Awakens. I hope they change the title back to The Search for More Money, but I don't think they will. But it is supposed to land sometime in 2027. I'm sure we'll get a lot of information going forward when the script is ready, when all of the casting is locked in, and the production team, and is Mel Brooks actually, there's no way he could direct at 98. That's completely insane. By the way, Mel Brooks also executive produced The Fly, the David Cronenberg, Jeff Goldblum, Gina Davis classic. So he didn't only work on and around comedies. Spaceballs, The Schwartz Awakens, coming in 2027. And I, for one, can't wait to see what they conjure up. This has been episode 562 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all so much for spending some of your Friday the 13th afternoon here with me in New York. And if you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or the others in which we're hosted, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Until then, may the Schwartz be with you. Peace.